Hi, this is Methuss, a show where I take a look at some gunpla and see how authentic they are. This time, we are looking at the RE 100 1-100 Guncannon Detector. MSA-005K Guncannon Detector is a successor of the Guncannon in the One-Year War. It served the Federation during the late UC 80s throughout the UC 90s. However, the Guncannon detector is not developed from the Guncannon. In fact, the Guncannon detector is not even developed by the Federation themselves, or they didn't order it to be developed. The Guncannon detector was developed by Caliber, a branch of ORG founded by the former White Base crew Hayato Kobayashi, with their mobile suit team leader being Admiral Ray. With that in mind, it is easy to see why they would want to develop something like a Guncannon, sort of a familiar old friend that they're familiar with its use, its tactics, and other things. And like many think ORG, the Guncannon detector was being introduced into the Federation force after the Grips conflict. I'll be rating this kit with Saga, Style, Action, Gimmick, and Absence. Style! Yeah, this thing is really big. You don't even really see the cannons on the back. And I already have my usual filming space maxed out to the edge. So this one would be more of a on the table video, unless there are closer details that I want to show. Anyways, you will notice right away how the barrel-shaped lower legs, forearms, and the head is very Guncannon looking. In fact, I would say the chest or torso is quite Guncannon looking, but the thighs and the upper arms are way too small for a Guncannon, even though the shoulders are pretty in line with the Guncannon bore type. That is because when we flip around, we'll see this whole thing over here. Now, the old Guncannon have a relatively simple backpack because they are, conventional shell-firing cannons. With the Guncannon 2, they have a beam cannon and a targeting module, but they are not as elaborate as this. And certainly, it wouldn't have pulse transmission conduits running around. The whole thing, these shoulder joints, large shoulder guards, like where do they come from? Well, they all came from the Methuss. So, yeah, by the model name, the Guncannon detector is more like Methuss cannon type. Now, Methuss is a prototype mobile suit designed from the ground up to be able to quickly change into mobile armor mode so that it can fly really fast, but without much consideration in combat operations, because it is a prototype testing out for basically how you build a transformable mobile suit. So for Caliber, even though they are mostly operating on Earth and have to fly a lot, Methuss isn't quite as useful. What they do lack are some firepower. So what they did is to convert the Methuss ORG supply them with into Guncannon detectors. Now I would also like to mention this is a RE100 once again. So like the 9 gauge, it is more like a large HG instead of MG with less things. Let's put it that way. Still, at least, from afar, looks pretty good and certainly is big. Now let's take a look at some details. The head is built with a lot of parts, and it does have separate piece for the Falcon guns, as well as for the antenna base and the transceiver. Well, transceiver usually have their own piece, but for a mass production type, usually got skipped. It's usually preserved for Gundam type. For a RE100, it's not that hard to have one, and if you can see right near the middle where the reinforced rib is for the head, you can see a mono eye. That is another sign that Guncannon Detector is actually a Methuss. Now, unfortunately, this kit does not have a movable mono eye mechanic, but otherwise, Guncannon Detector can shift its mono eye for long-range shots. So yeah, unless you really pay attention to the interior details, Guncannon Detector just looks like it is a gun cannon with twin eyes. Unfortunately, the top of the head or the top piece is not a single piece, so you do have a seam line on the top, but it is, not very visible. And while the backpack block most of it, the back of the head have quite a bit of details. Now, the kit doesn't actually come with a sticker for the back lens. I just cut off some other stickers for it, but that works. Not that you see that a lot anyways. Up next is the chest. Not really unusual for a Federation mobile suit, but you can tell it is a Methuss with the extra large cockpit hatch. Methuss have this pretty much because it is transformable, so it's have a independent block of cockpit. Skirts, Guncannon Detector only have side skirts, and we have grenades for the grenade launcher. I don't think they are meant to be launchable from the skirts, but it's probably doable. And then the central pylon is a lot less smaller than the Methuss because Guncannon Detector doesn't have a MA mold, so it doesn't need a large hook to connect to the top of the backpack that acts as a nose cone, and nicely built as well. Legs, pretty much what you expect from a gun cannon type thing, and we actually have a single tube for the thigh, so no any kind of clamshell, just a single tube, which I guess is a lot easier to do in 1:100, but I will save that for later, shouldn't I? Yeah, very nice to see one piece thigh. And then the lower leg is less fortunate, but we do have separate knee pads, separate shin pads, and we do have a decent embossed line for where the armor meets. And this is actually part of the design, as Methuss was supposed to have a giant boosters for legs. It would make sense they are not a large shields on the front, but more so on the side. We can see the remnant of that with all these extra thrusters on the back of Guncannon Detector and the very generous space for the lower part of the knee, as well as the foot. You rarely see this much room for the ankle on a mobile suit unless it is a transformable one, which again Guncannon Detector isn't, but Methuss is. No front ankle guard either. Onto the arms, Guncannon Detector have these rather simple shoulder pads. And yeah, I don't think that is a bad idea for a support mobile suit to just have shoulder armor that face forward. And we even have a bit of a anti-air beam gun. Uh, if the Vulcan guns aren't enough to take down whatever is approaching, you got a beam gun for close quarter defense or close-in defense. Also, we do have back lining for these shoulder pads, so that's impressive. What's less impressive is the mountings. They are pretty simple for the model, with just a bit of reinforced ribs all around and then mostly hollow, but it is foreseeable for Guncannon Detector to have mountings like this on his shoulder. Again, it is built by Caliber, salvaging Methuss frame. So instead of doing elaborate shoulder pads, just slap something that works, which works for me. As for the arms, we still have the large Methuss needed elbow guards for the landing gears, or avionic hooks like for launching or for emergency landing, as you will, or emergency return where it can hook onto bungee. Well, it wouldn't be a bungee for mobile suit. Actually, mobile suits are not that much more heavy than aircrafts. So yeah, hooking on to cables for braking or latching to catapults, that sort of thing. Not really used for the Guncannon Detector, but it would make a great piece as a elbow rest when it lie down to shoot, so it stays. But separation for the rest of the forearm isn't that special, but you don't really see the assembly line, so it's okay. Now back to the backpack. You can see these hydraulics here. They are the remnants of Methuss with his transformable backpack nose cone thing. It is now repurposed as the beam cannon module, which has two beam cannons and also the thrusters. Since the fusion reactor power up the beam cannon and the excess heat can be used for thrusting. So good economy, energy layout here. Very much like the 9K we have looked at before, the Guncannon Detector as a RE100 is a scale-up HG with a bit more leadway for a bit more detail, but not as fine or intricate as Master Grade, nor not quite as hung up on having extra mechanical details as full mechanics, which makes it a bit easier to build. Still, we are talking about style here. Assembly line, it is the newer HG type of assembly line layout, so you see them sometimes, but they are not egregious in the good angles, or especially the good angles. They are hidden from the good angles, but you will see them on the bad angles. So not quite as good as the newest, latest HG, but pretty good for non-MG. Color separation, Guncannon Detector is a grunt, even though it's somewhat rare. Yeah, having the red hatch, clear parts for the visor, and then different tones of blue. Gray is mostly one color, but you do kinda have a secondary one. Yeah, there are actually two-tone grays here, so that's pretty good as well. Talking about two-tone gray, I forgot to show the bottom of the feet. More or less same as HG, but with no hollow at all, so bit better than HG, but again, not quite as elaborate as you would get from MG. So while Guncannon Detector here rivals some of the newest HG release, it is RE100, it is bigger, it should be slightly better. So the star ratings will be downgraded to A only. It's very good, pretty accurate for when it appears in anime and the law books, but as a larger model, it could have been better. Next is action. Action isn't just the number of articulations, but also how useful those articulations are. Before we do that, Guncannon Detector is, I would say, 1.5 Gen RE100, where they still use this universal polycap nuts, pretty much, as you can see. They are basically octagon nuts with a socket in the middle for the pegs to pass through. You do have a second type for the ball joints and another type that is slightly smaller. And then you have the third type here, which has pegs on either side so it can rotate. This polycap set was the selling point of RE100 when it was first released, so no matter what Bandai do to the part separation, they always have a somewhat flexible tension retention would be pretty decent joint system. But as time went on, it's pretty clear either RE100 isn't selling as well, or this method isn't really saving R&D costs as Bandai would have hoped. So Guncannon Detector here have quite a few joints that doesn't actually use these polycaps, but it still use quite a few of them around. The head is on a double ball joint, pretty much like HG. One ball at the torso and one ball at the head. Because Guncannon Detector have quite a large head, so it doesn't really look up a lot. And the chin certainly prevents it from looking down too much. But yeah, it can rotate all the way to the side and even 180 if you are being brave. Torso, we do have like chest and ab crunch, but they are not as big as some of the modern HG. So they exist, but they kind of don't do much. And then the waist is on a pivot. And then the side skirt using the third type polycap, so it can go side to side as well as rotate. And the legs or the thigh is just on a double peg, so it can go all the way up more than 90 if you want to, and then spray out, but the side skirt will block it. After that, we go for the knee, which have double joint. The knee pads can move if you want to. There is also a track for the knee pads, so you can drop it down lower if you like. And then the feet, as we have been talking about, it has a lot of real estate for being, was a transformable suit. And the back toe can flip up that much, and the front toe can flip all the way. You can have Guncannon Detector doing a super kneel, which is the selling point on all the promotional images. The arms We have a block for the butterfly joint, and yeah, we rotate the shoulder pads out of the way. You can go all the way across, and then we got bicep pivot as usual, and the elbow is a single joint, but it is a very generous single joint. What do we call this? 135 degrees, and then we got a ball joint for the hand. The beam cannon here is on a pivot, so we can go up and down. And the cannon, as we have been looking at, does have pivot. Well, in fact, they're on a ball joint. You can see there's slight angles. Then I think it's possible for Guncannon detector to actually have ball joint in law, given how you do want a bit of side traverse for your cannons for steady shots at awkward angles. So Guncannon detector can kneel very stably. Now, if you want extra stability, the transformation mechanics of Methuss can actually help. The front skirt actually comes down like a tripod leg, and that's what these elaborate hydraulic looking things supposed to do, to make connection with this stable pot for extra stability. But yeah, with the giant feet, it's not a hard task for Guncannon detector to stay very stable to begin with. So yeah, kind of a gimmick, to be honest, but since we are talking about things that move for the most part, and while we are at it, let's do the standard procedures. I'm less optimistic with the large backpack and the less than ideal joint tensions, but here we go. Oh, nope. Wait, nope. Here we go. Super easy, barely inconvenient for Guncannon detector to send on 1 feet. Oh, yep, it is giving away. Yeah, this is probably another reason why they move away from those universal polycap nuts. They don't retain tension as much as Bandai hope they do. But, you know, for reasonable movement, maybe not kung fu fight like this, it is pretty good. So, yeah, not too terrible, to be honest. And very good with the toe movement, to be honest. And yeah, it will stand naturally, no matter what you do. I guess, while it is a bit boring, I will give Guncannon detector an A for actions. Not spectacular. Well, it is spectacular considering it is just a single joint with that right range, and if you straighten up the elbow, you don't even see that. And the cannons have a bit of side movement. The legs are basically going wherever you want them to go. And we even have a bit of back skirt action. So it is overall pretty good, but because of these polycap nuts not working as well as Bandai thought they would, and you can't really increase tension like you do with just simple plastic joints, I have to give an A for action. Again, could have been better. Partly its own weight is bullying itself for action, but also partly as a larger kit, it can afford more things for better action. So next is Gimmick. Gimmick are the onboard weapons, optional weapons, and other functionality of the mobile suit. We had to look at the third leg. We had to look at the grenades, the Falcon guns, and then we have the beam cannon here. It is quite a few parts to build up, and it does go for a bit of an angle. Unfortunately, the barrel isn't as deep as I think it should be, but at least it's easy to paint. Good enough to not have any point deduction. Beam cannons, quite a build with quite a bit of scopes. The injection ports are not as ideal. To be honest, I do feel injection ports on the beam cannons show how Guncannon Detector is more of an HG, especially with large piece and the mold line right here. Otherwise, yeah, the whole backpack build is quite elaborate with the back optic having a clear piece. I put a silver sticker behind that, so that looks good. And you can't really see because of the hood, but there are actually scopes behind the thruster blinds. So very good gun cannon, a very good beam cannon built. Again, barrel is not going down as much as I would like them to, but for a larger scale it's probably better for them to end up on top for you to paint. Now, what I haven't been talking about is the beam rifle. Guncannon Detector's beam rifle is a really complex build, MG worthy in a sense. You can see a bit of hollow here in there, but those hollow bits are not unrealistic. You kind of see those in a real gun. Yeah, especially with the grenade launcher with the lever to open it up. That is really nice. The beam rifle, like the actual rifle, even have a hollow tube going all the way down instead of ending up early in the front like the beam cannons. So, and then the front strap sickle is actually movable. This is cool, even though most don't really use them. It's probably good for transportation. And then the optic actually have a clear part and a silver sticker provided, so it looks really good. Top of the beam rifle, you even have a finished part all the way on the top to cover up the seam line in the middle, and the stock have a bit of emboss for it, so the gap very noticeable, but not ugly, I would say. So yeah, a really good beam rifle build, or over-engineered, to be honest. A beam rifle over-engineered for the rest of the kit, but it is, earning points nonetheless. Now, we also include extra bits in Gimmick. We do get extra shoulder armor mount. As you can see, just a single piece, but I would say they're not unrealistic. So, cool to have spare. There are modification potential in this in case you want to swap things out or mount other things on your Guncannon Detector. So that's nice. We also have a slide type Gundam stand adapter. Pretty standard affair, but nice nonetheless. And finally, the 170mm cannon, a successor to the 180mm cannon in the 08 MS team. This piece is intended for the Master Grade Nemo that show up alongside with Guncannon Detector in Unicorn for the Siege of Torrington. Unlike the beam rifle, this cannon is a bit more in line with RE100 in the way it is built. It is not a simple clamshell, but it still have a lot of clamshell seam line going around it. The handle is the same size as Guncannon Detector's hand, so Guncannon Detector can certainly use it if you want to. I guess for maximum firepower it would be nice. But yeah, I choose to leave it off the side because I would I would build a Nemo Master Grade one day. So until then, with all the details included to show how Guncannon Detector is based on the Methuss, with all the beam cannons around fully movable, with a very nice beam rifle, and the extra 170mm cannon, I have to give S for Gimmick. As a former mobile suit variation design being reintroduced as part of the Unicorn, you can get more, trick out gimmick in a package like Guncannon Detector. Last and not least is absence. To be honest, not much is absent for the Guncannon Detector. The sticker sheets, fairly basic, just for the sensor, basically the clear parts. For some reason, Bandai decided the sensors need to have metallic sticker over them, and I just cut them up and sticking them at the back of those clear parts, and then a one simple silver part for the optic on the beam rifle. And we got a sticker decal for all the unit markings as well as warnings for the Guncannon Detector. I guess for RE100 this is cool. If I'm not making a video where I have to touch the thing, manipulate it quite a lot, I would definitely put this on. I know a matte finish would stop, the sticker from flaying out, but yeah, because like I don't stick them. One, I'm lazy, but also I do like to play with my gun blast, so nice addition either way. And 99K, after building it or during building it, the parts really feels like they belong to Hexi. Like the injection ports are way too thick. The parts are, they probably adjust the parts thickness, but at places it does feel like the parts are a bit too thick for a build this big. And if this kit is more like the original Gen 1 RE100, it would definitely have a bit more internal support instead of shell support. Like we will definitely have more things like these shoulder clamps for the inside. So when the outer shell slap on, it will, take up the slack. But that's probably because the Gen 1s are simplified MGs, and from Gen 1.5 on we have enlarged, improved HG. So again, I like the RE100 line. I like the full mechanics line. I just wish Bandai just go, you know what? All this extra branding is unnecessary. Let's just call them HG100. And, everybody's happy to have big gun blasts. That's one way to go. The other way to go is do what they did before with GWNX, where they go, well, if you want a simpler build, we have the 1 to 144. You can play around with it a little bit more, and then we have the 1 to 100, where we shove in a bit more goodies in there. Bandai definitely have the capacity to design, well, to have a single design that works for both. While there are some legacy things for the 1 to 100, it's not that big of a deal because they can add, extra parts in there to make up for it. that strategy kind of fell short during the SID era, the early 2000s, so they stopped altogether. Anyways, stop myself from ranting too much about the current state of 1 to 140 and 1 to 100 catalog. I am happy that the Guncannon Detector is a general release. I just wish it is a 1 to 144 so it is easier to fit with the rest of my collection, especially the center one. So the verdict for the RE100 1 to 100 MSA-005K Guncannon Detector is A for style, A for action, S for gimmick, and A for absence. Overall, if you like MSV, if you like Gundam Unicorn, if you're just that guy who just liked the Siege of Torrington, get this kit. If you want a big Gunpla that is kind of a grunt, this is not a bad option. To just have and stand around, it's not a long build and it looks quite good until you take really close look, and even so, it is pretty good enough. Thanks for watching, see you next time.